Hello everyone and welcome to round 3 of the 2025 Minnesota Open. So for this round, again, against another national master, let's get right into it. So for round number 3, I guess we're coming from round number 1 that we won on time. Round number 2, we were winning against Charles Hua, the national master, but we ended up drawing the game because we couldn't clearly finish that end game that was totally winning, but it happened. So round number 3, we go against another national master, this time the highest rated opponent that I've played over the board so far. So a 22-12 rated opponent, Dexter Thompson. Let's go, let's do it. So for this one, the first 2 rounds I played with the white pieces. This is the first round that we get to play with 90 minutes on the clock and 30-second increments. So games are longer for this one because we finally caught up to the 3-day event group. Okay, so the first 2 rounds were 60 minutes with 5-second delay. But from here on out, it's just gonna be 90 minutes with 30-second increments. So it's very hard to flag for this type of game, right? The games are very long. And we're playing with the black pieces. So let's go. So e4, I respond with c6, the Caro-Kann. So we'll see if our Caro-Kann can do some damage to a title player, okay? So here after d4, I just go for my regular d5. And here it's up to my opponent, whatever they want to do, right? So they can go for knight c3, go for a classical Caro-Kann. We can go for the Tartakower after takes, and then knight here, and takes. So it's up to my opponent what he wants to do. So my opponent goes for it with exchange Caro-Kann. So whenever you're not sure about what to do as white against the Caro-Kann, the exchange variation is very simple, because after this regular development and the bishop goes to d3, the idea is to attack the pawn here on d4 with the knight, because if let's say our opponent doesn't do anything, here we can literally just capture the pawn on d4, because any checks that happen to the king, we can, if a check happens here, we can just capture the piece for free. And there are no really good discover attacks to win the knight back. So in this position, we would just win a pawn, right? So here, very common response is to go with c3. And then from here, it's just a regular game of chess. I just develop my knight on f6, bishop develops, and then I go with queen b6 because the bishop left the defense of the b2 pawn. I decide to go right away and attack this b2 pawn. So here are a couple ideas, actually like 3 ideas or so, where that you can either push the pawn to b3, which is, I don't think it's the best move, because pushing the pawn to b3 creates a weakness here on c3. So a very common move would be to bring the queen to c2, nice square, always putting some pressure on the h7 pawn. But also just queen b3, which is the move that my opponent plays. So here, if I capture my opponent's queen, this a pawn would take the queen back, and he opens the file for the rook. So it's a very nice idea to play in these types of positions. So I don't really want to capture, although I double my opponent's pawns, he opens the file for the rook, you know? So my opponent will have some nice targets, or like a little a purpose to go for, right? So here I decided to go with bishop g4. My plan behind bishop g4 was to, whenever this knight develops, the g knight develops, if it moves here, I would capture it. If it develops to h3, I capture it, doubling the pawns. If it develops to e3, I would capture it, doubling the pawns. So, and even if it develops here on e2, I would capture that knight, and this bishop will have moved once and twice. You know, that will be the reason why I would capture it. So my opponent just develops a knight, and I just, in this case, I guess I don't have to do much. I was just afraid of having the knight jump here to b5, and I don't really have good squares or good pieces to defend this the c7 square with, because the bishop would line up with the knight to give a fork, right? So I need to be careful here. So I just capture the queen, and I play the move a6, and a6 doesn't prevent the knight jump, because if I capture the knight here, my opponent will just capture this rook with check, and I'll be down the exchange. But the point of this move is to at one point bring my rook here to a7, right? So here if the knight jumps, sorry, after this one, if the knight still goes to b5, my plan was to come with king d7 and cover this square. If the knight for some reason jumps here to c7, that's not a good move, I don't think, because I probably have rook c8 attacking the knight, and the knight doesn't have any good squares to go to. I think the best move here says h3. I can try to just bring my I think the purpose of this is to like kick these pieces out and then kick this knight out here, I think. But apparently, I mean, obviously after this move they have to just capture here, and then I think there's this move. Okay, that's the idea. Okay, that's the idea. So here I apparently have to capture here, bishop takes, king takes, and I'm just down the exchange. I'm down the exchange, but apparently I have something going on. I'm not sure what. Computers, man. So I play a6. My opponent can still go there, but he doesn't go for that. He goes for b4. Now I develop my pawn to be able to get my bishop out somehow. And I'm not afraid of moving my king to d7, to be honest, because there are no queens on the board. So, you know, I'm fine with that. My opponent decides to bring the knight back, and the idea is that he wants to bring the knight all the way back to d2 to develop his other knight, because he doesn't want me to take that knight, losing tempo on the bishop or doubling the pawns on his king side. So that gives me time to just, first of all, move my rook out of the way. He moves the knight back to d2, and then I just bring my bishop there. After the knight develops, I just castle. So I guess just bringing the knight all the way back to be able to develop the other knight, that really helped me with my moves, right? So here, kicks my bishop out. Apparently one of the good moves here is to just capture this guy, but I decided to keep the bishops to trade it like this. Takes, I doubled my pawns, and now we have to just play some game of chess. The problem is that I only have 2 pawns here on the queen side, and my opponent has a majority of pawns here against my 2 pawns. So we still need to be careful, or my opponent has to be careful with pushing any pawns, right? Because if my opponent, for example, goes with a move like this, I have already ideas of moving my knight out and targeting these weaknesses here on c3 and things like that. So any pawn move really weakens the position. So my opponent still has to be careful. So here, after I took with my pawn, rook development, not sure why the rook there though, but rook development, I bring my knight to a7 to have an idea of bringing my knight to b5, and always prevent any pawn push, because I'm always targeting any some weakness on the c file. Knight develops, I bring my rook to d8 to try to trade the knights by bringing my knight to d7, and I just want to trade all the pieces. If I trade all the pieces, I think I have a good chance of just drawing the game. And as I think I mentioned this before, but my whole goal of the tournament was to draw the games, not lose any games, but try to draw the games, because I'm playing against strong opponents. The knight goes there to b3, and I'm already seeing that there are some ideas of bringing the knight here to a5. First of all, I try to trade the knight, because if the knight comes here on this square, I just trade this knight and I just defend the b7 pawn with the rook on d7. My opponent brings the knight to d3, and here I have an only move. An only move to keep the advantage of the white pieces with 0 plus 0.5. Take some time, and as you have seen, I'm gonna be doing this a lot for these games. Like treat it as like a chess exercise. Try to find the only move that keeps the advantage low. I guess we have a couple options. It's not too bad, but one of okay, it's gonna be a knight move. Okay, it's a knight move. And I didn't make the move. So the move that you have to find, to be honest, is just knight c6. Knight c6 is the move that prevents an infiltration of a knight on a5. I looked at that move, but then for some reason I totally forgot about the follow-up of my opponent. I made this move, knight b5. I played the move knight b5, and after that move, I started thinking a lot. I should have thought before, not after. I made this move, and I thought that I was totally lost. As you can see, the advantage went up for the white pieces. And it's because of there's only one move. If you could play the white pieces here, try to find that move that really damages the black pieces. I think you win one pawn. And it's kind of hard to do anything for the black pieces, to be honest. Like, pieces are kind of stuck after that. Pause the video, take some time. I will proceed with the explanation. And the move is knight a5. Knight a5, the purpose of this move is to capture this b7 pawn. And if you push the pawn attacking the knight doesn't go back, but it goes forward to b7, attacking the rook on d8. If you were to move the rook on b8, now your opponent can just capture the a6 pawn. It is difficult to target this knight because of the bishop. The diagonal of the bishop here is insane. So I cannot just capture this knight. And somehow maybe the opponent can try to push some pawns forward, maybe double up the rooks or something and then go for some push or something. It is very difficult to play. Very difficult to play. So when my opponent, I was thinking, if my opponent goes knight a5, in my head, I was already kind of lost. So I was thinking, I'm just going to bring the rook to b8, which is even worse. In my head, I was ready to play that move. Because that way, I just give the exchange and I was thinking, somehow I can try to create a fortress. If the knight goes here, I'm just going to trade everything. Apparently, like, it's better to trade with a knight. I was thinking about trading with the bishop. So it would have been a disaster, apparently. So after this move, my opponent grabbed the piece and played knight c5, knight b to c5. So when my opponent made this move, after a long time of thinking, he made the move, he placed the piece on the board, and then he went like, he got surprised at his own miss. And inside of me, man, I felt this huge relief. Because now we're just playing chess and the advantage, he didn't keep the advantage. It was just knight a5 and I was lost. So right away, I capture the knight with the bishop. My opponent captures with the b pawn. And here I played knight b8, which is not the best move. And I should have kept the knight, to be honest. I should have kept the knight. Because my opponent, I have the light square pawns, or the pawns on the light squares. I should just keep the knight because the bishop doesn't do much. You know what I mean? So I should just keep the knight. But I don't know why I played this one. I just felt like a huge relief and then I played this move. My opponent captures right away because the bishop is not a good piece in this game. And now my opponent goes with knight there. Here, after this move, I felt like my opponent had just, let's see. I don't think it's showing in the top engine moves, but I was kind of afraid about this move. c6. And look at this, it doesn't show as one of the top engine moves at all, but whenever you made this move, it's still like it still keeps as like some nice advantage for the white pieces. And I was thinking here, if I capture here, maybe my opponent can just infiltrate. I have to defend this pawn. Maybe my opponent can do something like this. They can never push this because they will just drop a pawn for free. So maybe there's some chess to be played in this position. Yes. So here my opponent went with knight b4. And I just bring my knight to a7. Again, there's another push like this because the rooks can infiltrate here, but also create some weakness here on b2 for me to be able to target if there's no b pawn. If I get rid of my b pawn, I can always target this b2 pawn of my opponent. So here my opponent just brings the rook back, and I just put my rook on c8 to go for a knight trade pretty soon. After king f8, my opponent brings the rook back, because I can always fall into this trick of king e7, trying to bring my king all the way to the queen side, but then there's this little trick of knight takes d5 check, and the pawn cannot capture the knight because of the pin. So we still have to be careful, you know, we gotta be careful. So after this, my opponent brings the rook back there. I offer a knight trade, takes, And now we're good. So I'm trying to go for a draw. That's all I can hope for, right? And my idea probably is to bring the king here to e7. Maybe go for some like from pushes here of the pawns and trying to undermine this pawns to then try to get rid of all this majority of my opponent's pawns. My opponent goes with b4. And I see the idea. He wants to go for this, like he wants to undermine my a pawn, try to get rid of this pawns. So I'm already thinking I need to bring my king forward. My opponent brings the rook back over there, and I bring my rook, my b rook to d7. And my idea is I just want to have my rooks here on the 7th and defend the b pawn. And that's all I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna go back and forth, just like go for a draw, right? My opponent pushes a pawn, takes, rook d7. Apparently the best move is just rook c, like bring the rook here to c7. To be honest, there's not much of a difference, I guess. Because if this and then this, I still bring the rook here, right? Although apparently what's a better move here? Are you serious? Wait, rook b8. What happens to this? Oh, I always target this pawn, I guess. Man, I don't know. I was just happy with this idea because I just bring both of my rooks here on the 7th rank. I push my pawn on g5 because, so this is a nice move. I like this move, g5, just because it prevents h4. That was the whole purpose of g5. And then I win some space here after f5. If the pawn goes like this, I just capture. If the pawn now wants to go for something like this, it will be a good weakness that I can target pretty soon. My opponent goes and attacks both pawn, or the b7 pawn with both rooks. I just bring my rook back, and the rook goes there on b6. Now my plan is just to go back and forth because there's no really good entrance for my opponent, right? But keep in mind that my opponent's a strong opponent, 2212 rating, 2212 rating, against a 1649 that was showing there on the pairing papers. So my opponent, knowing that he's very strong against me, he wants to win the game. He wants to win the game, and with the evaluation now that we can see, we don't have the evaluation during the over the board tournament, right? But with this eval, he's seen that there are some good chances because he always has these pushes. I'm not sure how he can take advantage of it. Maybe with king d3 or something, and then go for like some c4 pushes and then also bring the king this way. Maybe, I'm not sure, you know. So I'm just planning on going back and forth, and then after this I'm seeing that my opponent's going towards the king side, and after I move back and forth, he goes back to e3 and he's trying to create some play on the king side. I bring my king to f6 because if he wants to trade rooks, I'm happy to trade a rook. If he gives me a check here, I'll just cover with a rook, and that's fine, you know. So he goes for pawn g3, which gives me an idea that he's gonna go for the f4 push. I just bring my rook here, defending the e6 pawn just in case. My opponent goes for the f4 push here. I capture once. I see that if my opponent captures with the king, I would come with g5 check, and that gives me a lot of space, and I would be happy to work with this, you know. That would be nice for me. So after this, I take with the pawn and my opponent takes with the pawn, which now gives me a target, and my target is h3. I calmly play the move g6, which apparently here is not the best move. Let's see what the best move is. What's the best move? It says g5. Okay, g5. There's this move g5, and I was like also looking at it a little bit, not so much. I thought that for some reason my opponent had check, and I kind of forgot that if I move my king here, I'm attacking the rook, and he has to bring the rook back somewhere. d8, I guess, and I can just capture. I don't know. I thought like for some reason I would lose the pawn. I don't know why I thought that, but it was fine. Just g6, it was okay. I felt good with that one because now I have the h file open and I can target this guy. My opponent starts bringing the king to defend the pawn. I now try to target that pawn. He has to defend it with the king. And now I rotate the rooks. Remember the h rook, that is like this rook here, was defending this pawn on e6. Now I bring the other rook to defend the e pawn. so that I'm constantly adding pressure on this pawn. Maybe I have ideas of bringing this rook up and then at one point bringing this other rook here. I'm not sure. But the thing is, like, if I'm bringing the rook here, they just capture this pawn. So, and I let a passer go through, right? So that's not good. That's not good. Rook there on d8, and we gotta be careful still. And during this game, we still need to be careful because if I just mess up, if I just do a move like this, I drop another pawn with rook takes d5. Rook takes d5, I cannot capture this rook because the b6 rook pins the pawn to the king, right? So we still have to be precise with all these things. So I just move my king out of the way, and my opponent just pushes the h pawn. I'm just going back and forth. And bringing the rook to g7, it allows my opponent to go with rook h8. Here I go for a rook trade, and I'm happy with this. I'm very happy with this. Because I was thinking if my opponent goes with rook h7, here I can just like go back and forth. Again, this rook is kind of trapped now. So that will be a repetition, right? So here, instead of that, my opponent just captures the rook. I take, and he goes for h5. h5, here I just capture the pawn, and I'm seeing that my opponent wants to capture that pawn back, right? So he goes for that. I just go king f7. There's no way I can defend that pawn, right? Because if I try to defend the pawn with the rook, now this pawn on e6 falls, and everything after is gonna fall as well. So I bring my king to f7. He's gonna capture back, and I bring my king to f6. Now, if my opponent is not careful, let's say my opponent makes a random move, there's mating 1 with rook h7 because my f pawn is also covering here on g4. So never too late to hang checkmate, right? So here my opponent has to be precise and find the only move, which is king h6, because now there's no checkmate, right? And here I also have to be careful. What if I play this move here, rook g7? We would lose to a tactic, which is rook takes e6 check. I have to capture this guy, and my opponent will just capture the rook here on g7. And I have split pawns. Very hard for me to play here. And I'm in Tsutswang, I think. I cannot really walk anywhere without my opponent capturing my pawns or something, right? Never too late to hang anything. We need to still be careful. I was thinking about this, but then I saw, oh, there's this tactic, so I cannot go for that. Here I made a waiting move, which is just rook d7. Rook d7, just a waiting move. What if my opponent goes here to d6? That's still a draw because I can capture here and always go for this pawn or something and just make us like some moves. Let's say after king f7, my opponent can go whatever move and I can try to capture this pawn, no problem. So my opponent goes with rook b1. Rook b1, although this is all a draw still, during the game we don't have evaluation bars, right? So here I thought that he had no moves after the move rook g7, and I felt like I was in control. A little backstory, a little context here. I am playing my moves very fast, okay? The moves that I'm playing so fast to the point that I'm up an hour on the clock. I'm up an hour, guys. And every time we make a move, we are added 30 seconds, right? So I remember being up an hour on the clock. And every time my opponent would look at the clock, he would raise his arms saying like, "What? Come on, man, think, you know?" But so far, I feel like I've been playing well, other than, you know, the whole miss idea, right, with knight a5. Other than that, I've been playing well. So I feel like my opponent is seeing that he's in a very rough position, a very tough position, and he's down on the clock by an hour. And he's only playing with seconds left at this point. He only has a few seconds left on the clock. So, but he's still added 30-second increments, right? So I think he's under a minute or something on the clock, or a few minutes or something. He has no time to think. I have an hour, man. I can take my time for critical positions. But so far, I feel like the position has played itself. So rook g7, my opponent goes with the move rook b6. And here I find the move rook g3. If my opponent captures the pawn on b7, that's just a checkmate again, because the king is acting as a back rank, you know, guardian, I guess, for the rook to just give a checkmate to the king on h6. So my opponent cannot capture that pawn. And he has to just give up this pawn. So here I'm thinking, okay, my opponent finds the only move, king h7, because there's no checkmate anymore. And I'm thinking, like, I'm seeing, like, if I give other checks, I just help my opponent. So I just go for the pawn capture here. And I saw that, of course, my opponent has the move rook b7. Here, I find the move rook c4. And after playing the rook, so I put a lot of thought into this. And I thought to myself, I'm going to play rook c4. He's going to play rook king g8. And he's going to go for some checks. And at one point, this is going to result in a draw. First of all, I thought he had multiple checks, but I can try to escape. But there's a sequence where he can give me checks, a couple checks, and then bring his king to f8 and grab my e6 pawn. And the pawns are kind of split, so it should be a draw. So my opponent has to find king g8, and that's it. I was already, I knew that he was going to play that. At least I was very confident that he was going to play that. But my opponent is trying to go for a win, because now he's thinking, okay, I have a passer. The c pawn is ready to promote pretty soon. And now in my head, I'm thinking, I have time to capture pawns and sacrifice my rook for the pawn, and I'll be playing 3 pawns versus rook. And because the king is very far away, I think I can promote into a queen. So that's what was going on in my head. Here my opponent plays the move rook c7 and throws the game. So now we need to stay sharp. We cannot have the same thing that happened in round 2. We need to stay sharp, guys. Here I went with the move rook takes d4, allowing the push of the pawn. And here I don't go back with the rook yet to c4, but instead I capture the second pawn on f4. In my head, I'm ready to sacrifice my rook for the pawn. Again, we don't have an evaluation bar in like OTV games, right? My opponent pushes the rook forward because he's seeing that if he pushes the rook somewhere, I can just bring my rook and I'm ready to sacrifice. I'm in position, right? He brings the rook to c8 to maybe go for some ideas of like check, like push, check, and then promotion or something. You know, maybe like he's going for this idea of if I go here, there's this push, and if I push the pawn, then he has the check, I move, and then promotion, and then he wins the rook. Maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's his plan. Let's check it out. So something like this here, and if I push the pawn forward, maybe he has this check, and then I move, and then he has this. Maybe that's what he's thinking. I'm not sure. So after the rook goes to c8, I bring my rook to c4, and I'm ready to sacrifice it for the pawn at one point. But now I don't really need to sacrifice it. I mean, I don't need to sacrifice it yet, because I have king e5 and I don't have any checks with promotion. After this, my opponent is already just going with f7, and I'm thinking maybe he wants to bring the rook here and give me some checks or something. But if the rook comes here, I can just capture this pawn. Now, I took a few minutes to think, what pawn do I push? Do I push the d pawn? Do I push the f pawn? So I was really thinking, right? I was like, what the heck? Do I push this one? Do I push this one? I was thinking if I push this one, the rook comes here or something. I really was thinking hard, but all the lines work. I just need to still be precise. I decided to push the f pawn because my opponent's king is blocking the rook position to attack the pawn. That was my logic. And I was thinking if the rook comes all the way here, I don't know. Maybe just still push the pawn forward, I guess. Because I guess if the rook here, I have just takes. And then I can I was already seeing that my opponent is ready to capture this pawn somehow. Maybe a rook here takes, check, king up, king takes here on e6. And I was a little bit scared that my pawns were too split. You know? But I'm still fine. I'm still fine. So my opponent went with king e7, which was very surprising. But then I was very afraid of pushing my king forward. First of all, I'm going to push my pawn. But I was getting afraid. I was a little bit scared. So I started pushing the pawn forward to f3. And I'm seeing that after my opponent's king goes to d7, he wants to protect this passer. But I'm ready to sacrifice my rook for the pawn anyway. As long as I'm able to defend these guys. I go with rook f4 because now there's no way that my opponent can stop the promotion unless he goes like, actually he can't. He can't. He goes with pawn c7 and I'm ready to give a check and sacrifice my rook for this guy. I'm ready for it. f2. King goes to e8. I give a check. Rook e7. Now stop the video. And I know you're seeing the evaluation bar. Stop the video and find the best move in the position. I think you have several moves. You have 4 lines. One move obviously is the best. The second best move is -8 almost. Third move is -4. Fourth move is -3, and after that is only -1, -0.68 and stuff like that. So it gets very suspicious. Find the best move though. Stop the video. I will proceed with the explanation now. So what I played here was promotion of a queen. My opponent, apparently the best move here is to take, but to be honest, I was ready. If my opponent captures here, I capture with check, and wherever the king goes, I'm just capturing this guy, guys. I'm just keeping it simple. Because after king takes, I just promote the d pawn. I was just ready for it. So after this and promotion, my opponent promotes into a queen. Here I was thinking for a little bit, and I said, I can capture the rook, check, and somehow I can try to win the queen. I have 2 pawns. I'm up 2 pawns, you know. I have to have something. So again, stop the video. Find the best continuation in this position. I found the move queen b5 check. And my opponent doesn't have many options, right? Especially because if the king goes here to c7, I can just capture this rook if I want. Here, rook, and we're winning. We're winning another piece and stuff. My opponent went with king d8 here. What do we have, guys? Stop it again if you need to. Stop the video. And then, or pause it, I guess. You have to find the move rook f8. At this point, my opponent has like no time on the clock. He has less than 10 seconds on the clock. He's trying to figure out a way to do something here. The problem is that there are no lines. The game ended here. The game ended in this position because he just let his clock run out because he was stressed out and he just couldn't figure it out. But here, for example, we have a line where, let's say, if the king goes here to c7, I just have queen c5. The king moves somewhere and I just capture the queen for free with check and everything. You know? And if in this position, if the rook goes to e8, I have rook takes. Only move, and again, queen c5. And it's just checkmate pretty soon. So again, in this position, my opponent just let his clock run out because there was nothing else he could do. This time, we got to beat a national master on the board, and not, I mean, I guess on time, but he just let it run because there was nothing that he could do. So this was a good win against a national master, guys. He missed one move, knight a5, which would have been a totally different game. But we were able to capitalize on that. And we should never talk ourselves down, saying like, oh, you know, like they messed up on all those things and I won because they messed up. We won, guys. And when you win your games, you should be proud of that. You know? You should be proud of that, guys. Don't talk yourself down. Everybody makes mistakes. Grandmasters make mistakes. Anyone can make mistakes, guys. We're all human. But we need to take advantage of those mistakes and also play the best moves ourselves. You know? So, I am very happy with this game. Probably one of my best games so far. I mean, against one of the strongest opponents I've played. The strongest opponent I've ever played over the board so far. Here's a little reflection. I hope you like it.
Guys, dude, what the heck is going on, man? I'm on freaking fire, dude. Thing is, like, I've been wearing my mask so I don't show emotions and stuff, and like I think it helps me stay focused. I don't know why. One thing that the like Castle Cody Halley, James Way from Idaho, they're like the top guys in Idaho. They would always wear their face masks. I don't know, maybe it's also like part of it, right? Or I mean, people are coughing all the time and stuff, but maybe it helps them stay focused and stuff. So I've been doing this since last tournament. I did this too, and when I started wearing my mask, my face mask, I started winning. I started like focusing on like drawing and things. Guys, I beat a 22-12 rated opponent, man. What's up, man? Dude, that is insane. So again, from, I don't know if I mentioned this, maybe I did. Round one, I literally faced 3 national masters. I beat 2 of them, and I drew against one where I was actually winning against them. So it started locked in, man. It just stayed locked in. Okay, I cannot stop the video a little bit because the guy that I played against, he came like to watch for a second. I was feeling weird about it. So, okay, more thoughts. What was I thinking during the game? Okay, knight a5. So I was ready to be down the exchange against my opponent. If my opponent would have played knight a5, I was ready to bring my rook and defend the pawn and be down the exchange and hope for a fortress or something. Whenever my opponent grabbed the knight and brought it inside, after a few seconds, then he just had this expression that he messed up. And I felt so much relief, because that was the mistake that I had to capitalize on, or the miss, I guess, that I had to capitalize on to go against the bishop as with the knight. I was ready to go for that, man. I wanted to go because my pawns were in the light squares. His bishop was dark square bishop, so I wanted to play knight versus bishop. And I just needed to bring my knight, man. There were so many moves. Once I do the analysis with you guys, I'll be able to see. I haven't been able to put my games on chess.com and I'll analyze them. I definitely want to do that. I mean, you guys are just getting the little video after my round, and I should go grab some food. Actually, I should probably head towards, I don't even know where the heck the parking is. But guys, dude, we're freaking doing it, man. Beating 2 national masters, winning against a national master and drawing at the end. I should have won that too. Nah, it's fine, man. Don't get too excited, dude. It's all good. Dude, I'm there, man. I'm there, dude. I'm good enough, dude. I'm good enough. We're all good enough, guys. The same thought from last tournament that I was saying, all these like negative thoughts that we have that we're not good enough, just get that out of your head, guys, because you can do it. I can do it. I'm doing it right now. I don't know what changed today, man. It's just my mentality, I guess. Like doing really well last tournament, I think that hyped me up. The Road to 2300 series, the thing is, like, before I wasn't really playing much, and lately I've been playing a little bit, not so much. But the good thing is that I've been practicing with you guys, just doing my ranked games, my rated games. I've been playing on Lead Chess. Also on Lead Chess, I got my rating to 2300 as well on Rapid. So I think all the little training is helping. And I think that's it. I'm gonna go grab some food, guys. I'll see you guys on the next round.